Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Janna Cook, and I'm the community manager of BookShark. Today, I'm with Amy Ratliff. She's in product development for BookShark, and we're going to be talking about our new science updates. Want to encourage you that if you have any questions while we're talking, please join us in the chat. We'll be there live to answer any of your comments or concerns. If that chat box is no longer available, please email info@bookshark.com. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Janna. Thanks for having me.
As we get started, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about what you do at BookShark.
So a lot of what I do for BookShark is working in product development, which means that I get to review, edit, and sometimes write curriculum for us, mostly working with the instructor's guides or helping the team find new books and incorporating that into our curriculum. Every once in a while, I'm also helping with some customer service stuff. I'm helping with the website, in the off seasons for product development. So help with a lot of different things with BookShark.
Well, that's wonderful. You are the jack of all trades for BookShark.
It keeps me on my toes. It's really fun, and I really love this company.
How long have you been with BookShark, Amy?
I believe it's been about 4 years.
Okay, good. So
Mhm.
you are definitely an expert in all things pertaining to what we're going to be talking about today, which is science. You have personally spent several months, if not years, in working
Mhm.
with this new science update. So, first of all, I'm sure our viewers are really wondering why the update. Why would we choose to change our curriculum to be based off of standards? And what standards are we basing this off of?
Yeah, so this is something that we've been working on for a couple of years now. We've been working on it really hard, and I'm incorporating lots of homeschool teachers and public school teachers and scientists. A lot of people have come together to be working on this standards-based curriculum that we're coming out with. Some of the biggest reasons that we want to do this is to make sure that all homeschool families are able to sufficiently submit their work to the state. For some homeschool families, it's more important that they meet standards than others, and that usually depends on the state that you're with and if you're working with a charter school or co-op or just doing it independently. So we want to make sure that our program is easy to use and good to use for families from whatever homeschool background you are coming from. Um, and the standards that we are basing them off of is called the Next Generation Science Standards. These are a set of standards that was put together by a large group of people. States are maybe half the states in the country, plus a lot of teachers, a lot of professional scientists, a lot of people came together and put together these standards that are pretty nationally based, that just help schools and teachers and homeschool parents like our customers know what to make sure that they are teaching to their students as they go through their education career. Because science has been so important. There's been so many huge scientific updates just the past couple centuries, or even every year, more and more science and technology updates come out. And it's very important that all of our students are able to not just know the basics of science, but know how to think scientifically and gain the skills to solve problems using science in order to go into good careers once they go through college and graduate. It's a pretty important life skill to be learning. So we wanted to make sure that our curriculum incorporated a lot of the standards to help make sure that the students are succeeding everywhere that they need to succeed.
It does feel as though technology and therefore science is kind of this boulder rolling downhill and it's gaining speed. I know when, even take for instance, iPhones first came out, it's like you had to wait and it was a couple years before another one came out. And now they're just coming out with, it's like they're advancing in their technology. Almost every 12 months, something new is coming out. It's coming faster. It's coming just quicker. And I'm amazed myself at how much things change just within a year. So I'm
Mhm.
excited as a homeschool mom that uses BookShark's curriculum to see these new updates, to know that my child is getting state of the art information in the
Mhm.
subject that is rapidly changing.
Right, and I think that's because it's so rapidly changing. I mean, we've had to introduce like new technologically based books here in Bookshark sometimes, but almost as soon as we start publishing it, just a couple years later, because everything has changed so much, it's really difficult to keep the books up to date. However, that's why incorporating how to think about science and how to experiment, how to hypothesize, how to test is so crucial in a science program because science is always constantly evolving and new stuff is coming. So one of the things that we loved about the NGSS standards is that it incorporates a lot of how to think and also being able to make connections between the different subjects. There's like biology, chemistry, life science, space, all of that stuff. And when you go to school, when I went to public school in high school, you sit down and you take one chemistry class, you take one biology class, you take one physics class, and so they're seemingly separate things. But NGSS kind of also focuses on, well, not everything is that separated. In fact, the different subjects often cross over to each other and connect with each other. And so we've also been trying to incorporate that in our new experiments, especially. I'm just saying, hey, this biology and chemistry thing, they work together, so you're learning both at once.
And I want to assure our customers that we are not deviating from our literature based science approach. I think that's really important to make sure that it's one of the things that I love about Bookshark, that you love about Bookshark, that our
Mhm.
customers love about Bookshark is that we are literature based. And so as we're moving into this update and we're using this next generation science standards, we are still staying true to our roots in the fact that it is rooted in literature.
Absolutely. Yeah. All of our packages still have a lot of really fantastic literature rich books in them. We have resources like big resource books that cover a lot of different topics. We have biographies on scientists. We still have some of our favorite old books that are more subject specific, like oceans or um, some specific type of biology. So we still have a broad range of different kinds of fantastic books. The same people that have picked our previous books still put lots of effort into picking the same high level science books for our new packages because literature rich is like that's our heart and our soul. We never want to wander away from having fantastic books that really engage young minds and bring them into science. But yeah, so the changes that we made to meet the standards is not necessarily the literature rich portion, but rather what topics we cover when, and also making sure that we do that critical thinking piece and some inquiry based experiments. So the biggest new piece that we have is that we have these experiment books like this that we wrote ourselves that in, first off, the experiments now, it didn't used to be like this, but now the experiments that you do every week tie into the reading that you are doing. Um, so for example, the first 3 days of a week, you might be reading about ants. This is for your younger elementary kid. So you're reading about ants, you're doing this for 3 days a week, you're answering activity sheets, which are still the same format that Bookshark's always had. And then at the end of the week, you go and there's different experiments in here about ants. You make ant tunnels, you make an ant model of their body, and you do some chemistry that I'm going to show you later that the ants know how to do. Ants know how to do chemistry. Can you imagine? It's crazy.
Ants are amazing. So it really sounds like we've almost doubled down in the fact that we are using literature and we're tying it into everything that you've read throughout the week. Then you now are going to do a hands-on experiment with. So really we've actually made that tie even stronger. by making these
Mm-mm.
experiments tie into the weekly readings so that they're not a separate entity as they were before.
I agree. It's especially important for those kinesthetic learners. I mean, it's important for everybody really to actually put something into practice after you've been reading and learning about it. But yeah, and I'll go more into all of the experiments later because I think there's some really cool stuff in that experiment book, and I want to make sure you guys know about it. But the way that they were written includes a lot of like engaging the student's curious mind in trying to figure out the science.
What I love about what we're doing with this new science program is, like we've mentioned, how quickly science itself doesn't necessarily change, but the technology, the information that we can gain, even we can talk about AI, right? Like all of these things
Mm.
are advancing, but like you said, the scientific process has not changed. We are not changing the way we explain and teach the scientific process. And I'm really excited about that because that's the part that keeps that critical thinking going. And
Mhm.
it's kind of the theme throughout all of our curriculum, right? So even though we have a science program and a reading through history program, we're still literature based, but we're still engaging that critical thinking no matter what subject we're presenting to the students. And again, it's one of the things that I love about Bookshark.
One common question that we are getting, Janna, about these new science programs that we're releasing is that the NGSS standards are often based off, or they're all based off of specific grades. But here at Bookshark, we definitely lean more towards age ranges instead of grades, except for specifically skill-based subjects like math and reading. We usually put a grade level to that, but we prefer to do age ranges for all of those families out there that have multiple kids, or for even like lots of school teachers will often group a couple of grades together when doing more content-based subjects like history, science, that kind of stuff. So true to that form, Bookshark is still labeling all of our programs based off of age range, and therefore we're still calling them science A, B, C, D, so on. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to explain that because we did base each level off of a specific grade standard from the NGSS. So for example, level A, we based a lot of our experiments and our topics off of the kindergarten topics that NGSS suggests to cover. However, the way that we wrote the experiments, the different books that we chose is still going to be very applicable for any student between the ages 5 and 7. So if you are with a family that you need to report specifically to your school district or the state that your kindergartner did kindergarten science very specifically, then you can choose level A. But if you live in an area where you are able to combine your kids, then you can still choose based off of the age range instead of the specific grade. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is that because we rearranged the order of how we covered some of the topics, some of the books that we kept, because we couldn't get rid of all of our old books, we just loved some of them too much. So we reused some of our old books in our new packages, but because we cover the topics in a slightly different order, you might want to double check the next science that you're going into to see if you already have covered any of that material, and then decide if you want to do that science program again in your all subject package, or if you want to customize your science within the package. And that is one big new announcement that Bookshark has is we've been getting requests for a long time now to allow science to be a customizable option in our all subject package, and we now have that functionality. So if you want to do a level C all subject package, but you don't want to do our level C science, you can customize it to be a different science program. And I think that well, I'm personally really excited about it. We've wanted to do this for a while, so we're excited to be able to offer that opportunity now.
Now, in the past, when you have been able to customize on our website with an all subject package, you are only allowed to go up a level or down a level from what the recommendation is. Is that going to be the same with this science?
Great question. On our website, we do only allow to go up or down one level. However, if you look at it and you really, really want to do something different, you can always contact our customer service team at info@bookshark.com or call them at 303-797-2954, I believe. And they should be able to help you get a different science program.
Okay, that's great information to know because not all parents or those ordering our curriculum know that they can get some customization and that hasn't been available before in science. So it
Mhm.
is definitely exciting for those who have been with us for a while. And so so what you're saying is if I did level A last year and I'm
Mhm.
naturally going to progress to level B, when
Mhm.
I look at my science options, I may feel like, ooh, a lot of this stuff we covered last year in level A. So if I'm feeling that way, when I go to order my all subject package, I'm going to go ahead and customize the science and either go back to A if I have a
Mhm.
child that is between 5 and 7 or somewhere around in that area where it's appropriate, um, or go up to C.
Right. Yes. So if you are moving on and you decide that you don't like the next level of science that comes naturally to you, um, level A, for example, I do know has one book, the Children's Encyclopedia, that repeats itself in level B. Um, Now, some families, I think, is perfectly great and acceptable to do that review because maybe your student had a little bit of struggle last year. Maybe you want to make sure that those concepts got in. I mean, I don't think it ever really hurts to do a little bit of review with your kids, like making sure that you go back and recover certain subjects, I think is always good to make sure that they fully understand the concept. However, if your kid just flew through last year's science, say, or it seems too easy, or it seemed too difficult, even, then when you come back and you buy your level B package, if it was easy, I might suggest that you bump up to Science C. If your child had a little bit of difficulty, or just some of the books in our new Science A look fascinating to you and your kid, then I would go back to level A and do that one this year. It really depends on your specific situation.
What would you say the percentage is for the review, just so parents have an idea when they're making this decision?
It really depends on the level. Um, I mean, one thing that I would say is even though the reading and some of the activity sheet questions are going to be similar, one big thing is that all of our experiments have been changed and updated to this new, fancier, more inquiry-based NGSS science experiments. So that alone, if you're a little bit concerned about reviewing, that the new experiments alone are a brand new way to make this a similar content come much more to life and just really engage those curious minds.
So it would never hurt, in your opinion, and here you've been working on this for quite a while, as we said in the beginning. You would encourage parents that if they did A and they were going into B and they saw some things that were similar, you're saying it is okay to read to go ahead with B because no matter what they review throughout the year, that 4-day science experiment is going to be new.
The 4-day science experiment is always going to be brand spanking new. So if you think that that would benefit your child, then I absolutely think you could move on to level B and do some repetition. But if that doesn't sound like what you want to do, then I think it's equally as good of an idea to switch to level A or C science. It honestly just depends on the specific family situation.
Gotcha. I can honestly say I don't remember any science from the time I was 5 until probably high school. And so, I know that in my house, review, especially for science for subjects that maybe, don't come as naturally, like, I have more, readers, right? They'd rather read and write as opposed to be in that mathematics, science, type of mindset. And so we really encourage them to get into that just because they aren't naturally inclined to it doesn't mean there isn't something of value there, right? So I definitely would be that mom that would have no problem repeating some of that information as a review, just because then I know for sure that, you know, they're getting it. The other thing is a lot of times, I hear on our Book Shark Facebook page, our boot camp page, some of the other pages that I'm on, a lot of times people don't get through their entire curriculum in the year. Or, I
Mhm.
mean, I know that we have skipped weeks before in order to stay on schedule. So there is definitely merit in going back and, it may just been an off day or an off couple weeks. Like that time of day when I was doing science with my daughter, she just wasn't listening or really into it. So
Mhm.
I sometimes I think I fear repeating information, like, oh, I don't want to bore her. But at the same time, I don't know that I am boring her because she may have just heard us, a little bit of it that day. And then when she hears it again later on, 30 some weeks later, it could really come into her as new information, which
Mhm.
it would for me, for sure.
Mhm. Agreed. And I mean, personally, there's been so many times where I thought I knew a scientific concept, and then a year or two later, I come back to it and I read almost the same thing that I did before, and suddenly something just clicks and makes more sense. And I say, oh, I get it. I get it more now. So, and that absolutely happens with kids too.
Yeah,
So, all that being said, do you want to take a little peek into the new guide and experiment book?
absolutely. Show us what you have.
Okay, I'm gonna switch a camera view here for you really fast. Okay, so just like I was talking about earlier, our new standards-based science curriculum is still going to be pretty true to form with what you have come to know of BookShark Science. Our guides are all going to be very similar. So you see, we still have our normal schedule where you have a specific book to read, the pages for the first 3 days of the week. You're going to cover different activity sheet questions. And then on the fourth day of the week, you do an experiment. We also still have all of these optional do together activities. So if as you're going through the year, you want to do something that's a little bit more fun and like kinesthetic to engage in science, then those are all still there for you. We wrote a whole bunch more to go with all of our new topics and science books. So I hope you guys like all of them. And we still also, of course, have the supplies list of what we provide and what you provide for each week. And we give you the shopping list for what you need to provide next week. And we still have all these different notes on tips to teach various subjects. If a sensitive topic is coming up, like we touch on, like, for example, human reproduction or something like that, we'll put a note in the guide for you to be prepared for that. Otherwise, there's all sorts of fun factoids about science to add a little more pow to the different things that you're learning. And then, of course, we have all of your answer keys still and the activity sheets that your students will be working on. These particular weeks that I'm showing you right now go with that ants book that I was showing you earlier. Again, when we choose books, we often look for bright, colorful illustrations that are, scientifically accurate, that help the student really engage with the different subjects that you're trying to learn about. And then, of course, all of the activity sheets will ask you questions based off of the information that your student learned in here. Now, I wanted to show you guys how, now, just like I was saying earlier, our new science experiments often tie into the topics that you're learning that week. The experiment that I want to show you guys today has to do with this. So ants, specifically leafcutter ants, will grow fungus in their colonies, and then they eat the fungus for their food. And so we cover this a little bit here, but we want to go more in depth and learn a little bit more about this mixture of biology and chemistry in the experiment of the day. And here is the experiment from the experiment book that you cover the same week that you finish that book about ants. You've already talked about how ants make their ant hills and the engineering concepts involved in that. And then I'll show you guys really briefly. So you have this one about why do ants build tunnels? Then you have a second one about how ants walk. And so that talks a little bit about the physiology of the ants that you're studying. And then the third experiment, because we learn about ants for the first 3 weeks of the year, is about what leafcutter ants do with their leaves? And I never really thought about this before, but guess what? The ants do not actually eat the leaves themselves. Instead, the ants bring the leaves to their colony, feed the leaves. Well, they chew it up and feed it to the fungus that's growing in their colony. And then after the colony, or after the fungus has grown a little bit, then the ants eat the fungus, and the fungus is their food. So these ants are essentially farming their own fungus in their colonies. So this experiment is going to go a lot more in depth on how the ants use those leaves to make fungus. So there's lots of different aspects in this book that are going to be quite helpful to you to be completing this experiment with your kids. So first off, to point out, we have some key concepts down here. That's mostly for you as the parents to know the basics of what you're going to be teaching through that experiment. However, if you have a really curious kid, you could always read those aloud to the kid or give them a general idea of what they're going to cover, because it's often really good to bookend the day's lesson with the basic concepts of what you're learning to make sure that they know the big points. Up here, just like similar to the guide, we have the list of materials that you need to complete the experiment. Every week has some sort of introduction. Sometimes that brings in a little science lesson. Sometimes it's just this science thing happens in the world over here. And so it kind of piques the child's interest in the general concepts that you're learning today. Now here, we also often have a make a prediction section. So based off the information that the student already knows, either from their book or from this introduction, we ask the student a question to go ahead and start making them engage their critical thinking skills to say, oh, what do I think will happen if this? Fill in the blank. This is one of the big ways, and as I'll show you later, where we are trying to imitate a lot of the scientific method in our experiments. The scientific method, you make an observation, often with the introduction. You ask a question or make a prediction, make a hypothesis. That's with this prediction section. Then you test it. And then we take you to the investigate section, which is like testing your hypothesis. And we take you step by step through everything that you need to do to complete the experiment. Every once in a while, there'll be little sidebars here where little tidbits of information to help make it come more alive, to help the student make more connections to their actual life instead of just being science on a page. And then near the end, we have a series of questions that help the student draw conclusions. After you've done the experiment, you say, what happened here? What happened here? What happened here? What do you think that means? And so we guide the student in drawing their own conclusions. Often in the takeaway, we make sure we summarize what they should have learned, what you should have learned, because I don't know everything either. And most of our parents are probably learning alongside your kids. So the takeaway will give you a little summary and recap of what you learned throughout doing all of this. There's a few other fun things in here that, again, help you connect the science experiment to real life. We have a go further section, like see a bigger picture, make connections. So there's all sorts of little sidebars that we have that help you create new conversations between you and your student to be able to apply this to other parts of life.
Which is really what we're going for as parents, right? We don't want them to just memorize facts and go through the motions of an experiment. We really are trying to make those connections so that they see it out in life, not just on a book, and they're engaged in viewing the world through this kind of critical thinking. I mean, that's the part that I love so much about this new science, is that it isn't just information and, oh, let's just throw this experiment in because it kind of ties into what we had talked about. It really walks you through and brings you to this place where when you're out and about, your child will go, oh my gosh, look, that's the same concept that we learned, because we're engaging that critical thinking. We're going further than just information for information's sake. We're really trying to create this lifelong learning in our children.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that brings me back to another point that I want to make, Janna, is that a lot of our experiments that we have in these new books are very inquiry based, where we ask a question, we lead you through a series of steps to complete an experiment, and then um, we ask the questions to help you draw conclusions, engaging that critical thinking. But sometimes we also have the student create a model, and that model helps illustrate or demonstrate the concept that they're supposed to be understanding. So sometimes we have inquiry-based, sometimes we have models, and we also have been bringing in a lot more STEM and engineering like design process into our experiments, because that, like I was saying much earlier, is really important for kids these days to be learning and growing in if they want to have a future in some sort of scientific career, or even just the critical thinking skills to make it through life. So sometimes we'll also just have you create a model and then say, all right, well, you made this design. Think about how you can make the design better. How are you going to re-engineer this to make it better? And then we have you test it, and we have you record some data on some charts, especially for the older kids. There's lots of recording the data that you've been learning or during your experiment to see if one way is better than another way. So we are also engaging a lot of engineering design process, STEM, and inquiry-based experiments.
I've heard rumors that we also even have some coding in our new
Yes.
science.
Yes. Yeah. There so many of our new books I was just so excited to read, and I love them. So we do have a coding book that is in our science package. And to be honest, when I first saw that, I was like, how am I going to write this curriculum, because I know this much about computer coding. But the way that the book takes you through it, it's coding with a program called Scratch that is specifically made for children to learn how to code in an easy and safe environment. So hopefully you don't have a little panic attack like I did at first, because it's really engaging. They create different blocks for you so that you can just put the blocks of coding in order of what you want the program to do. And I think it's a really good way to get kids thinking about how to use computer coding. We also have some more books focusing on engineering. We have a lot of cool different biographies and focusing on so one of my favorite books is actually about how the wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park and all the effects that it had on the ecosystem of, reintroducing an apex predator that had been killed by hunters and different things like quite a while ago. And so there's just a lot of really cool books that I personally enjoy myself.
Well, that's super exciting. I hope that our viewers are getting excited just as much as we are when we're talking about this new science in our NGSS based program. So
Mhm.
I heard maybe that you possibly have a visual for us in reference to that experiment book you were just going through.
Yeah, so the experiment about the ants and the leaves and the fungus is all about, actually at this focus of it is the chemical reaction between sugar and a fungus, which is kind of a difficult concept for 5 to 7 year olds, but the way that I think that they wrote the experiment, it makes a lot of sense. So if you think about it, so the ants go and they get the leaves. The majority of what the leaves consist of are like sugar and water. And so the experiment that you do is you put sugar and water into a water bottle, you dissolve it, and then you put yeast into the water bottle. So just like the water, sugar, and yeast interact, is just how the chewed up leaves and the fungus and the ant colony interact, because the fungus will start eating up the sugar, will start growing, will start producing different gases and create its own energy so that the ants can start eating them. So before we started today, I dissolved some sugar and water into this water bottle and poured some yeast into it. Immediately afterwards, I put this balloon on the water bottle, and now you can see that, like after just however long we've been talking, that there is some gas that has been formed. And if you can see, when I first started, um, you could see about this much material in the water bottle, and now it's all the way up to here. Um, and that's because the yeast has kind of been growing and expanding and creating gases, and you can tell that the yeast is alive and is doing things. And that is how the fungus also eats the water sugar from the leaves in the ant colony to grow and become bigger, stronger, more nutrient rich fungus, so that the ants will then eat it and be able to live and make a bigger colony.
Well, I never thought that ants could be so engaging, but my goodness, just seeing that short little demonstration gets me excited to see more experiments that we have coming out in these levels that we've updated for this coming school year. So, in closing, Amy, do you have anything else that you want to share that you're super excited about that you feel like parents just need to know before they get on the computer and order their next science package from BookShark?
Hmm. I'm not sure if there's anything else, but I'm really excited about it. I hope that you guys get it and you love it. And if you like, please email us. Let us know what you think about the program because we want to hear how it's going for you.
Amy, thank you so much for taking the time today to explain a little bit more about what our updated science is, what we should expect from next generation science standards, and that we can all rest assured that we are still literature based in this science package. So, thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, we'll be in the chat, and if the chat box is no longer there, again, just email any questions info@bookshark.com. We'll see you next time.
Bye.